Have you ever wondered how the world was reshaped by the events of World War I? This monumental conflict, known initially as the Great War, began on July 28, 1914, and its aftershocks are still being felt today. It was a war that forever altered the political, economic and social landscapes of the era, and its impact transcended borders, touching nearly every corner of the globe. World War I was more than just a military conflict. It was a seismic event that shook the very foundations of the world order. It redrew the map of Europe, dismantled empires and gave birth to new nations. The war was a catalyst for change, accelerating social and economic transformations that had been simmering beneath the surface. The countries involved in the conflict were numerous, each with its unique motivations and ambitions. The Central Powers, led by Germany, Austria-Hungary and the Ottoman Empire, faced off against the Allies, a coalition that included the United Kingdom, France and Russia, later joined by the United States. These nations were drawn into a global conflict that none could escape from, a war that would claim millions of lives and reshape the world as they knew it. The war was not only a clash of armies, but also a battle of ideologies and national identities. It was a struggle for power and influence, for resources and territory. It was a war that tested the resolve of nations, that pushed individuals to their limits, and that challenged the very ideas of what it meant to be human. The echoes of World War I can be heard in our modern world, in our politics, our economies, and our societies. It is a part of our collective memory, a spectre that haunts the corridors of history. It serves as a stark reminder of the cost of conflict and the price of ambition. Now let's delve into the events that led to the outbreak of this devastating war. It all started with a spark, the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Now let's journey back to June 28, 1914, a day that would set in motion a series of events leading to the most devastating conflict the world had ever seen. World War I. The day started like any other in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. However, this was not to be an ordinary day. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary and his wife Sophie were in town for a visit. The couple was blissfully unaware that a group of Serbian nationalists had other plans for their day. As the Archduke and his wife paraded through the city, a young Serbian nationalist named Gavrilo Princip seized the moment. With a couple of shots, the heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire and his beloved wife were no more. The echo of those gunshots reverberated across Europe and beyond. The assassination of Franz Ferdinand was not just a tragic event, it was a spark that ignited a powder keg of tension existing throughout Europe. The Austro-Hungarian Empire was furious and sought retribution. Serbia, backed by Russia, was defiant. The intricate web of alliances and treaties among the nations of Europe began to unravel, pulling one country after another into a vortex of conflict. The diplomatic crises that ensued were a whirlwind of accusations, ultimatums and mobilizations. Countries were choosing sides, preparing for a conflict that was becoming increasingly inevitable. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, Russia mobilized to defend its Slavic brethren, and Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia. The dominoes were falling, and the world was being dragged into war. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand was the spark that lit the fuse of World War I. It was a moment that changed the course of history, a moment that showed how a single event could set off a chain reaction leading to global conflict. This assassination was just the beginning. The world was on a path to war. The world as it was known was about to change drastically, and nothing would ever be the same again. As tensions rose, the world was drawn into a conflict like no other. The First World War, a global struggle that would forever change the course of history, was about to begin. In the wake of Archduke Ferdinand's assassination, a complex web of alliances and rivalries began to unravel. On July 28, 1914, Austria-Hungary, still reeling from the death of their heir to the throne, declared war on Serbia. This act of aggression set a chain of events into motion that would soon involve nations far beyond the borders of these two countries. The world watched, breath held, as the dominoes began to fall. Serbia, a small nation with mighty allies, was not alone. Russia, bound by a treaty to protect its Slavic brethren, mobilized in Serbia's defense. In response to this, Germany, allied with Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia. own alliances, was then compelled to declare war on Germany. And so the cycle continued, with nation after nation getting pulled into the fray. The lines were drawn, creating two major groups: the Allies, comprising Russia, France, and the United Kingdom, among others, and the Central Powers, primarily made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire. The stage was set for a conflict on a scale that the world had never seen before. These alliances were not just political or military strategies. They were ties that bound nations together, ties that promised support in times of conflict. These commitments were not taken lightly. As each nation declared war, they were not simply choosing sides, they were honoring their promises to their allies. This war was not just about the murder of an archduke or the ambitions of a few nations. It was about honor, loyalty, and the lengths to which nations would go to defend their allies and their principles. These alliances set the stage for a global conflict that would last for 4 long years, but no one could have possibly imagined the extent of the devastation that lay ahead. From the trenches to the open seas, the war saw many devastating battles. The magnitude of these conflicts was unlike anything the world had seen before, and the scars they left are still visible today. Let's turn our attention first to the Battle of the Somme, one of the largest and deadliest battles of the war. It began on July 1, 1916, and lasted until November, with over 1 million casualties reported. The initial aim of the battle was to relieve pressure on the French at Verdun, but it soon escalated into a grueling test of endurance for both sides. The first day alone saw the British suffer the worst losses in their military history, and yet the battle raged on for months. Speaking of Verdun, it was another major turning point in the war. The Battle of Verdun is considered the longest single battle of World War I, extending from February to December in 1916. Both the French and Germans suffered heavy casualties, with an estimated total of over 700,000. Verdun came to symbolize the futile and indiscriminate slaughter of the war. On the naval front, the Battle of Jutland stands out as the only major sea battle of the war. It took place over 2 days in May 1916 in the North Sea near the coast of Denmark's Jutland Peninsula. The British Royal Navy clashed with the German High Seas Fleet in a fierce confrontation. While both sides claimed victory, the British maintained control of the North Sea, keeping Germany's surface fleet largely confined to port for the remainder of the war. These battles were not just about territory or strategic advantage. They were about survival, about courage and endurance in the face of unimaginable horror. The Battle of the Somme, Verdun and Jutland were turning points, moments that tested the mettle of nations and defined the course of the war. These battles changed the course of the war and left a lasting impact on the world. After 4 long years of conflict, the world finally saw an end to the war. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918 marked the cessation of hostilities on the Western Front. It was the signing of the Armistice of Compiègne, a moment of relief, a glimmer of peace after the unrelenting storm of war. Yet the end of the fighting did not mean an immediate return to normalcy. The wounds of war were deep, the devastation widespread. The world had to grapple with the enormous task of rebuilding, both physically and emotionally. In this chaotic aftermath, the leaders of the victorious nations gathered in Paris to negotiate the terms of peace. The result was the Treaty of Versailles, signed on the 28th of June, 1919. This treaty, however, was not merely a peace agreement. It was a document that would shape the course of the 20th century. It held Germany and her allies responsible for the war, imposing heavy reparations and territorial losses. Many historians argue that this punitive approach sowed the seeds of resentment and discontent, setting the stage for future conflicts. The aftermath of the war brought about profound changes. Empires fell, new nations emerged, borders were redrawn. The political landscape of Europe was transformed. Economically, the cost of the war was staggering. It left many countries in debt, their economies in ruins. Socially, the war also left a profound impact. It changed the way people saw the world and their place in it. It gave rise to new ideas, new movements, new ways of thinking. World War I was not just a war, it was a turning point in history. It marked the end of an era and the beginning of a new one. It was a cataclysm that shook the world, leaving behind a legacy that continues to reverberate. World War I reshaped the world in ways that are still felt today.